Hello, and thank you for joining us for Changer Chats. I'm Grant Venable, Director of Change at Be the Change Volunteers. Today, we have a very special guest, our friend, Dr. Shane Epping, Professor of Photojournalism at the University of Wyoming. Shane joined BTCV on a volunteer trip in Peru in the Chino Village, after which he went back and used his skill in photojournalism to document the artisans who live there. Today, we're going to get some more of Shane's story, and we hope it inspires you to come and be a changer with us. Shane, welcome to Change Your Chats.
Thank you so much, Grant. That's an honor to be here.
So, Shane, we are actually featuring you in the January newsletter because we think it's great to open the year with your story. It's just very cool to see all the beautiful images that you sent from Peru after you went back and did your own photojournalism project. But let's just start a little further back in your story. Tell us about how you came to love photography and then came to make photography really your career, because you're not just a photojournalist, you're also an educator.
I think for me, maybe it goes back to being in high school, and I'm old enough that my introduction began with film photography, and really good friend of my mom's gave me a film camera for high school graduation, and I still have that camera. Actually, it's in my office in Wyoming. But I never really thought of photography as being something that I could make a living at. I don't think I was really exposed to that as a possibility. So I went to college, I studied history. I always thought I would be a lawyer. Uh, Ended up working for a litigator, didn't really like that. So it took me a while to kind of figure out that photography was something that I wanted to do. I think that happened in around 2005. I went back to school at the University of Missouri to get a master's degree in photojournalism. And that's really kind of been my professional and personal passion for the last 20 years.
That's awesome, Shane. So you also kind of a unique connection to BTCV. Tell us about how you learned about Be the Change volunteers.
So yeah, I was working for the University of Missouri full time as a photographer, and there's a gentleman named Berkeley Hudson, and Berkeley was faculty at University of Missouri, and he was friends with Jimmy Cook, and Jimmy's son Pomozo, who was coming over, I think, for spring break at that time or something. I can't remember the exact time.
Right.
And Berkeley had told Jimmy about me because I think Pomozo, well, I know Pomozo wanted to be a photojournalist, and so
Right.
we worked out this connection where Jimmy connected with me. I'd never met Jimmy before in my life, and he was like, "Hey, would you be interested in hanging out with Pomoto type of thing?" So it kind of turned into this like little mini internship of like a few days, right?
Yeah.
And was kind of mentoring Pomoto, and I really took it seriously. Jimmy dropped him off in my office, and we went up to Moberly and we documented a veterinarian of all people to document. We documented a veterinarian. That's so funny. I just made that connection just now.
Yeah.
An older gentleman, Dr. Vogelweid, and Pomoso was right there in the mix with things. And then he also went with me to St. Louis to work on a documentary story. And so that's when I kind of found out about Be the Change because Berkeley's daughters had done Be the Change. And I always kind of knew like, I want to do something with this in photography. But I didn't really know how to make it happen. And so, a few years went by and I reached out to Jimmy later and he had just written his book, his first book. And he dropped it off at my house. And it was funny. I opened it and it was the story talking about Pomosa. So I kind of took it as like this sign, like I really need to follow through on Be the Change. And ultimately I was able to do that in 2022.
And it's just so great. That's what I love about educators, because you weren't planning on doing this. I mean, you already had your work planned out, but you said, "Yeah, I'm gonna carve time out. I'm gonna make space to use what I'm already doing to teach someone else." And I love that about educators because the mission is to teach others, not necessarily just to get the work in front of us done. And
Mhm.
so it's such a cool way to be connected. So you read the book, Hand
Mhm.
Delivered Hope, and said, "I'm
Yep,
leaning into BTCV."
that's
And
right.
then you looked at the projects and you chose Peru. Tell us about that first team that you went on with BTCV and traveling to Peru.
Yeah, that was great. It was funny because we share a friend, Peter Stiepelman, and Peter and I know a lot of the same people in Columbia, Missouri. I lived there for 16 years and he was the superintendent of schools there. And so I had gone back to Missouri. I left Missouri in 2021 to come out to Colorado/Wyoming. And I was talking to some mutual friends, Jeremy and Amanda. I said, "Hey, what's Peter up to?" And they're like, "Well, he had just he did this thing last summer. He was like traveling, went to South America or something." And I was like, "Well, it wasn't Be the Change, was it?" And they're like, "Yeah. I think it was Be the Change." And I was like, "Really? Like, how did Peter find out about that?" Right. So I reached out to Peter and he's like, "Yeah, like you should go with us." And that was probably around 2021. Yeah, it's right around the time that I left Missouri. And so it took off like a rocket at that point, because then it was like I reached out to you and I was led to you probably by Peter and Jimmy. And then Peter was going to go to Peru. And so that made it real easy for me. Like, okay, I'll go to Peru. And I worked with the University of Wyoming, and Be the Change said, we'll sponsor a student with a scholarship. And then Peter's family, had some available funds to sponsor a student, and then I paid my own way. And it was just so kind of meant to be. And so then I took those two students with me, Emily Smith and Von Dakota, and we
Yep.
traveled to Peru. And that group is tight, Grant. I mean, we have a WhatsApp text thread or whatever, and here we are 2.5 years later. Everybody's very active on that thread. Those people
Isn't
have
that
been back to Chino, that from that same group.
Yeah, isn't that cool how that works out and just the closeness? The thing I love about BTCV. One of my favorite parts about BTCV is that we get 20 people from maybe five, six different states,
Mhm.
all different backgrounds, all different, all different beliefs, just very diverse groups, and they all get together and they all end up on a bus, and they're on that bus. In the case of Peru, a boat, but they're on that boat for a week. And so I love to watch how people start to connect and work past the things that maybe don't matter so much now that you're in a totally different country, out in the jungle, just trying to focus on one united mission, which is providing education for kids. I just love that about BTCB teams. And I love that, you didn't just make it about you. Again, as an educator, you thought, I'm going to bring some more young people with me and I'm going to broaden their global perspectives. And so we just are so grateful that you put that together for that trip. So which team were you on? You were on a relay team. We call them relay teams in Peru, where there's a first team that goes and does the foundation, another team that goes and does the superstructure. And they kind of pass a baton. We literally have a baton in Peru that they pass at the start of the trip. Which one of those teams were you on?
I think we were the first group. I think
So
we were
you got concrete day.
yeah, we did. That's exactly right. Yeah, we laid the concrete. We did that whole like relay of like buckets, and we kind of documented that with our cameras, obviously. But yeah, we were the first team.
That's some work. They call that BTCV beast mode. Doing concrete in the jungle is some work.
And sandbags, those sandbags, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw when you went down for your photo project, Dolly tricked you into moving some sandbags even though you weren't on the
Just one.
BTCV.
Yeah,
Just
just
one.
well, that was just me to kind of prove to myself that I could still do it. And let me tell you, I think those bags were wet. I did it. I was able to do it, but yeah, it was a struggle. And that was real nice for me. I mean, I wasn't there with Be the Change. I knew Be the Change was coming. A lot of my crew, they were coming back after
Yeah.
I was leaving. And it was kind of cool to feel like, at least in spirit, I was there.
Yeah, it was wonderful to see that photo image hit my inbox and just see that you were there and you were pursuing that project. So let's talk about that. So you went and you worked on one of the classrooms at the Jane Gordon Cook School in Chino, and that school is now complete. That is actually one of BTCV's first primary and secondary. Took us 10 years, a lot of involvement, a lot of investment for both the community and BTCV. But they have a full primary and secondary school in that community now, which is a first. But after your experience volunteering with BTCV, you went back to do a photojournalism project with the artisans who lived there. Just tell me about that.
When I went there in 2022, I wasn't exactly sure what we would do with the students from Wyoming because I kind of went there as an educator, but mainly as a laborer, right? As a volunteer laborer to help with the construction of the school building. So I didn't know how photography was going to show up. I really didn't know. And Jimmy, to his credit, was super gracious about Shane. You guys feel free to take pictures of whatever you want. You want to step away from construction stuff or maintenance, you can take pictures. And so we did a little bit of that, but then we kind of felt guilty, like if we were taking too many pictures that we weren't like helping our team. Anyway, Dolly Beaver, who we all know down there in Chino, amazing human being, told me about the artisans, and they have their own building down there that the community constructed, and kind of this sacred space for women and empowerment and selling these crafts to better their livelihood. And as an educator of photojournalism, I'm always kind of on the hunt for good stories. And so Vanta, one of my students, he was kind of attracted to documenting the kids of Chino, and he did that, whereas I was focused on these women. And so I kind of like tested the waters a little bit. Dolly arranged for some meetings. I did some kind of rudimentary interviews there in their space. And I did some portraits kind of out there where we were constructing the schools, but it wasn't real. Like I knew my focus was on building this new building. I really couldn't immerse myself into the story of telling about the Manos Amazonicas, right? And so I just kind of stayed in touch with Dolly, and there was a grant that came available at the University of Wyoming. So for $10,000 for
Yeah.
a faculty research activity. And I knew immediately when that came on my radar what I wanted to apply for. I wanted to go back to Chino, which I'd kind of talked about doing anyway. And so I applied for the grant. My proposal was really succinct. I was dialed in. It got approved straight away. And so then that's when I just started, making my trip in 2024. And I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, but I envisioned meeting each one of the artisans. It was all dependent upon Dolly, though, right? So like her schedule and would she be able to work with me? And Dolly could not have been more helpful. I mean, I went down there and spent about a week. She told me like what a good time frame would be, and every day, like she committed to working with me. We'd hop on the little boat. We went over to the village from the lodge. She would take me from artisan to artisan and let me do my thing. And I took a Polaroid camera down there too. This is something that was important to me. So I would, a lot of these women, maybe they've had one picture taken of themselves, maybe no pictures ever, or maybe they've had pictures, but they don't actually have physical copies. So on the spot, I would do like Polaroids, and I would like print those out, and I would give them to just as a kind of thank you. Like, hey, I don't want to
Yeah.
just, these people, they don't know who I am. They're kind of trusting me. They may not seem, I mean, they kind of knew me from 2022, but they kind of didn't, right?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be appreciative for their time and let them know that they were valued. So yeah, that's kind of a long answer maybe, but that's what happened.
That's a perfect answer. I love the Polaroid because so often when I take groups, we talk about photography. We even have articles on our website about appropriate photography and realizing that you're a guest, and this is somebody else's house, somebody else's land. You're a guest. And so if you want to take someone's photo, you need their permission. Just like you would like them to ask permission if they were walking through your neighborhood and your kids were playing in the front yard, you would want them to say, "Can I take a picture of you? Can I take a picture of your children? Is that all right? And this is why I think your outfit's beautiful, or here's my reason for wanting to do it." But we can't always develop it and share it right there. We do say if they agree, then say, "Great, take the photo," and then show them the photo so that they can have the enjoyment of seeing it as well. Don't just take it and walk off. But having the Polaroid is such a cool idea and such a great way to just immediately give them something for sharing the image with us. So I think that's so cool. So when you were there, you're doing your project on the artisans. Were you able to see basically start to finish how they make their crafts? Because they use jungle materials for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, Dolly was she was dialed in on I think my mission to tell the story visually. So I think we started maybe with a couple portraits and then she would kind of arrange it with the women depending upon their schedules, like, what should we show Shane? And so one of the things they did was take me to their farms in the jungle. And these farms were not like what Americans might think of in terms of a farm. It was hilarious. So we get on this boat, and first of all, the entry point into their farms, I never would have been able to identify, but they like knew exactly where to go. And so we're in there and we're hiking back, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, this is Estelita's farm here." And I was like, "How can you tell this is your farm? This is your property?" Because it just looks like a bunch of trees.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, "Oh, well, this tree right here is like the end point." And I was joking with Dolly, like, "Well, this tree looks like every other single tree that's in here." But they knew, right? That's like
Yeah.
their thing. And so they treated it as this was a real deal. So they brought their tools and they were cutting down the branches and then they were stripping the leaves and then they bundled them up. And so I was doing video and stills. And so I would do documentary stuff, which I've included in the exhibit. And then I did a couple posed portraits and I got bitten up pretty good on that grant, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, but a couple days back in the States, uh, the repercussions resulted. But anyway, so I did that. The women welcomed me into the farms, and then then they had the bundles they took back to the village, and then we did spend another day where they would dye those. So they had the natural kind of materials there from the jungle. And they would make colors out of those by heating them up on the spot. And then they would put the strands of chambira in there. And then they would leave those to dry. And
Yeah.
so I did that. And then there's some stuff of them like, actually kind of weaving them together. And so I documented that. So like the whole thing, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's so cool. It's not just that you went in and saw them, doing the weaving. You actually saw where these materials come from, the extra process, because they're, the color, whatever, blue, red, purple may not grow on a tree, right? Like they've got to make the dyes, they've got to dye all the materials. All those things are very artisan, very hand done out of the jungle. And so I just think it's so cool that now that is well documented by your photos so that people can see the amount of effort that went into making these beautiful baskets and other crafts that they make. So, at the end of your time in Peru, you, of course, submitted all of your project work, and now some of it's being displayed in Denver, Colorado, in the art gallery, D
Yeah.
Art.
Yeah. D apostrophe art gallery. That's right.
Yeah. Tell us about how that was set up and what people can do to go see those images.
Okay. So, Dart Gallery, it's located in the Arts District in Denver, as you said, and they had a call maybe for 2025 on available gallery space, and it's very competitive. They're always full. They book out a year early, and I wasn't real sure if I could get in, get admitted, but I applied, and they were very receptive to my idea, and yeah, they approved it. So I have my own little gallery space called Gallery East in within Dart, and I put up 25 photos, I think, and they're all sized pretty big. I went 20 by 30 inches. Plus everything's got a 2-inch white mat and a frame. I'd
Wow.
never done a show like that before. It took me 16 hours to do so. So it was a lot of work to make sure that it looked the way I wanted to. I also wanted to have viewers appreciate the location. So I did like a map, right, of Peru, and then I kind of indicated in yellow or gold, like where Chino is, El
Mhm.
Chino. I had kind of a descriptive thing about these are the artisans, like this is here. And then everybody who was in a photo, and this was very important to me, everybody who I photographed is identified by name. So I worked with Dolly, because it's like I didn't want to go to this remote area of the world and just, take, as we've talked about, and then have an
Yeah.
image of an unnamed person. That's like antithetical to what I tell students to do. So and so then at the last minute, I was kind of like, got all these pictures of women and doing their thing and the portraits in their own homes or some of them in front of their homes. And Lino, the only male member, but mainly women, 15 women, one male. And I was like, maybe I should have some of their crafts here, like on site. Like I photographed them and I had pictures of them, but maybe I should have them on site. And then maybe I should sell them. It seems so intuitive that I would have thought about that maybe in the beginning, but my focus was on the photography and the show.
Right.
And so I reached out to Dolly, like, hey, do you think we could get some of these goods? And of course, Dolly's like, yeah, so she sent me two huge boxes, right, of stuff.
Amazing.
We worked out the money stuff and yeah, so they're for sale. I've already had a couple people hit me up that have made payments to buy goods. And I mean, like the guy messaged me, this one buyer messaged me and was just like, thank you so much for telling this story about these amazing women. And we buy, America's a consumer country, it's capitalist, and that's fine. But a lot of times we don't know where stuff comes from. So my intent here is like, hey, here's this basket. Probably took a couple weeks to make it, I'm showing you how it was done in the middle of the Amazon jungle from start to finish. And on top of that, I'm showing you the person who made it. Here's Sonia over
Yeah.
here on the wall, and this is what she looks like. And when you buy this, you were helping these people live a better life. That's the mission here.
Man, it's just so, I love it. It's such an incredible full circle story. And I just also want to give props to Dolly and Paul Beaver, the founders and owners of the Lodge and Amazonia Expeditions, and also Angels of the Amazon, the nonprofit branch of that. They are some of the most selfless people I've ever met because for their company, they don't have to do anything other than take people for ecotourism, but they invest so much in those communities. And just like you said, you asked Dolly, can I get some of these crafts here? And she just did it. There's no great benefit to them other than they're just wonderful people. And so I'm glad that those wonderful people met you, who I consider a wonderful person as well. And I know everybody at Be the Change Volunteers does.
Thank you.
Shane, thank you for sharing your story with us today. Thank you for being a changer and helping build that school, but also for just continuing on and using your unique God-given skill set to go back and do something so awesome. This project is great. Please, if you are in the Colorado area, go down to Denver and check out Shane's exhibit. We will have that information in the newsletter and it will be available online. So Shane, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Grant. And none of this would have been possible, without Be the Change exposing me to it. So thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. If you like Changer Chats and you'd like to hear more of them, check them out at www.btcv.us. To show your financial support for Changer Chats, you can donate online at our website. Thank you and be the change.